Carry this one in your pocket today. Opened eyes are not proof of enlightenment. What you do after they open is. Tonight, we return to Enoch's Garden of Righteousness, where a mysterious tree forces us into an uncomfortable conversation about knowledge, wisdom, consciousness, and the price of finally seeing what you cannot unsee. And first, we are releasing one innocent suspect from spiritual jail. The apple. Genesis never says the forbidden fruit was an apple. Enoch does not say apple either. Humanity basically dragged produce into a crime scene, convicted it through artwork, and never bothered filing an appeal. But that correction opens a much bigger mystery. Because Enoch's account connects the tree with humanity gaining wisdom, having their eyes opened, recognizing their nakedness, and leaving the garden. So tonight, the question becomes deeper than, was knowledge forbidden? The better question is, Shar, what happens when knowledge arrives before character is ready to carry it? We have already watched that problem explode through Enoch's story. The Watchers possessed extraordinary knowledge. That did not make them wise. They crossed boundaries, distributed knowledge irresponsibly, and power outran restraint. Now Enoch brings us back to a garden where knowledge again stands beside a boundary. See the pattern? Access is not maturity. Information is not wisdom. Awakening is not mastery. And beloved, that lesson has aged disturbingly well. We carry more information in one little phone than ancient kings could have gathered in a lifetime, and somebody is still online at 6:42 in the morning arguing with a stranger named Dragon Daddy 847. The technology ascended. The nervous system is still working on it. That is why today's wisdom is about integration. Do not merely ask, what have I learned? Ask, what has learning changed in me? Did knowing more make you more compassionate, more discerning, harder to manipulate, better at admitting when you are wrong, more capable of recognizing manipulation without seeing an enemy behind every curtain? Because if knowledge only makes us feel so superior, we have not climbed the mountain. We decorated the ego. And there is another warning hidden here for every seeker of mysteries. Seeing patterns is not the same as proving patterns. Once the mind becomes trained to notice symbols, synchronicities, numbers, ancient stories, repeating themes, and hidden connections, everything starts looking connected. Sometimes it is. Sometimes two dots are just minding their own business and we drag them into a conspiracy they never applied for. That is why the seeker needs two eyes. Wonder and discernment. Wonder asks, could there be something deeper here? Discernment answers, beautiful. Now where are the receipts? Keep both. Mysticism without discernment can become fantasy. Discernment without wonder can become a locked room. But when the two walk together, now we have wisdom. So continue through your day remembering this. Your eyes opening is not graduation. It is enrollment. Once you recognize the pattern, you become responsible for whether you repeat it. Once you recognize manipulation, you become responsible for whether you practice it. Once you understand your wound, you become responsible for whether you hand it to somebody innocent. Once you learn better, eventually life asks whether you are willing to be better. Tonight, collective, we return to the garden. Not to blame Eve, not to blame Adam, and definitely not to interrogate the apple again. We are going after the deeper mystery. Why does sacred literature repeatedly place knowledge beside boundaries? Because perhaps the greatest danger was never that humanity would know too much. Perhaps it was that we would learn how to do extraordinary things before learning what kind of beings we should become while doing them. Carry that one through the day. Tonight, we open the eyes. Then we deal with what they see. Ahll.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 palms of eyes. The golden whisperer, sea star, Devalan see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
The first correction. The fruit was not an apple. Collective. There is no apple in Genesis. None. Genesis never identifies the fruit. First Enoch does not call it an apple either. The apple became prominent much later in Western artistic and literary traditions. Some explanations connect this partly with Latin wordplay involving malum, which could evoke apple and evil, depending on vowel length and context, although the history of the symbol is broader than one pun. But the biblical text? no apple. Humanity spent centuries painting Eve holding produce that the original narrator never put in her grocery basket. That is impressive. Imagine being falsely accused for 2,000 years and you are a fruit. Somewhere an apple is sitting in therapy saying, I wasn't even there. So first correction, stop blaming the apple. It has suffered enough. The second correction, Enoch doesn't present knowledge as a simple villain. This is where things get interesting. Raphael says that after eating, the first humans learned wisdom. Wisdom. That word matters because popular retellings often reduce the Eden story to, they wanted knowledge and knowledge was evil. But neither Genesis nor Enoch gives us something quite that childish. The problem is tangled up with command, boundary, desire, wisdom, mortality, and what humanity be capable of perceiving. Their eyes opened. They knew something afterward that they had not known before. And consciousness came with consequences. That is much deeper than, God didn't want anybody educated. If ignorance were the divine ideal, Enoch himself would be in enormous trouble. The entire book is basically Enoch asking celestial beings increasingly invasive questions. What's behind that mountain? Who are those spirits? Why are those stars chained? What is that tree? Where does the sun go? Uriel probably started avoiding eye contact. Enoch is not condemned for seeking understanding. He is repeatedly shown mysteries. So the issue cannot simply be knowledge bad. The Book of Enoch would collapse under its own plot. The real question is, what happens when knowledge arrives before wisdom knows how to carry it? There it is, our old friend. The same problem we saw with the Watchers. The Watchers and Eden share a strange pattern. Think about this. In the Watcher story, forbidden knowledge crosses a boundary. Weapons, sorcery, astrological teachings, cosmetics, metallurgy, other specialized arts. Knowledge enters human society and contributes to corruption because it becomes entangled with violence, domination, seduction, and power. Then Enoch reaches the Garden of Righteousness, and again we encounter knowledge tied to a boundary. That is not accidental. The Enochic imagination keeps asking, what kind of knowledge belongs where? Who should possess it? When should it be revealed? And what happens when power arrives without moral maturity? Now bring that into 2026. Humanity can split atoms, edit genes, generate synthetic media, manipulate attention at planetary scale, build machines capable of processing libraries faster than an ancient king could process one scroll. And apparently, we still cannot consistently stop ourselves from arguing with strangers underneath videos of cats. Knowledge? Extraordinary. Wisdom? Shipping delay. That gap is the danger. Knowledge is a multiplier. Here is tonight's esoteric principle. Knowledge magnifies the character holding it. Give medicine to compassion. You get healing. Give chemistry to hatred. You can get poison. Give money to generosity. You can build schools. Give money to greed. Somebody buys their fourth yacht while explaining why the warehouse employees do not deserve chairs. Give spiritual knowledge to humility. You may get wisdom. Give spiritual knowledge to ego. You get somebody calling themselves Supreme Galactic Archangel Kevin after 3 podcasts. Knowledge does not automatically purify the knower. Sometimes it simply gives the person better equipment. That is why initiation traditions often placed boundaries around teachings. Not necessarily because every secret was supernatural. Sometimes secrecy functioned as discipline. Could you wait? Could you listen? Could you demonstrate responsibility? Could you receive something without immediately turning around and announcing, "Everybody gather around, I have been chosen"? Some mysteries test character before they test intelligence. Opened eyes. Now we arrive at that haunting phrase. Their eyes were opened. Genesis uses it. Enoch echoes the tradition. And that phrase has survived because it captures something every person eventually experiences. Once you truly see something, you cannot become the person who never saw it. A child discovers parents are imperfect. Eyes open. A person discovers a family secret. Eyes open. Someone learns how propaganda works. Eyes open. You recognize your own toxic pattern. Eyes open. You discover the person you idolized was deeply flawed. Eyes open. And suddenly you miss 5 minutes ago. Because awakening sounds glamorous until you realize consciousness has no return policy. Everybody wants enlightenment. Nobody mentions that enlightenment sometimes begins with, wait, What the hell is that? Now you have to deal with it. That is the price of seeing. The frequency of consciousness. Throughout this series, we have been correcting the internet version of frequency. Enoch does not hand us modern frequency charts. He gives us order, timing, boundaries, cosmic courses, wisdom, and consequence. Tonight, another dimension enters: awareness. Your internal world changes depending upon what you can perceive. Two people can stand in the same room and inhabit completely different realities because one recognizes a pattern the other cannot yet see. That does not automatically make the first person spiritually superior. Careful. Seeing more can produce compassion or arrogance. Sometimes awakening creates the most unbearable person at brunch. They learned one concept Thursday, and by Sunday, everybody else is asleep. Beloved, you discovered attachment theory. Please finish your pancakes. Real awakening usually produces humility because every new layer of understanding reveals how much remains unknown. The mountain gets bigger as you climb it. The fool learns one thing and announces mastery. The wise learn 10 things and discover 100 questions. Enoch keeps asking questions. That itself is part of the teaching. Nakedness. Then the first humans recognize their nakedness. This has been interpreted through sexuality so heavily that people sometimes miss the broader symbolic force. Nakedness means exposure. Nothing hidden. Nothing covering vulnerability. Consciousness creates self-awareness, and self-awareness creates the possibility of shame. Before I know how others might judge me, I simply exist. Once I become aware of myself as an object seen by others, I can become embarrassed. I can compare. I can conceal. I can perform. Welcome to civilization. We invented clothing, then status clothing, then designer clothing, then filters, then digital avatars, then editing software capable of making somebody look 27 while their knees are quietly filing a complaint with Medicare. Humanity has been sewing fig leaves ever since. The deeper issue is not fabric. It is, what are we trying to hide once we become aware that we can be seen? The first glamour spell. Now, let us get slick. Remember our previous teachings about glamour? The moment humans became conscious of appearance, presentation became power. How do I look? How am I perceived? Can appearance change how others treat me? Suddenly, identity has theater, and Enoch's Watcher tradition later connects forbidden teaching with beautification and adornment. Again, we see the relationship between knowledge, perception, desire, and power. But we need nuance. Adornment itself is not automatically evil. Ancient people wore jewelry, used oils, styled hair, wore beautiful garments. The issue is when appearance becomes deception, domination, obsession, or the replacement for character. A polished exterior can hide chaos. A sacred vocabulary can hide ego. A beautiful family photograph can hide a miserable household. A smiling leader can hide corruption. A spiritual influencer can own 17 singing bowls and still owe everybody an apology. Never confuse presentation with condition. The fruit looks at the roots. The serpent question. Now somebody is waiting. What about the serpent? We need to be precise. In Genesis 3, the serpent is described as a crafty creature. Genesis itself does not explicitly introduce the serpent by saying, "Hello, this is Satan." The identification of Eden's serpent with Satan develops more explicitly in later Jewish and Christian interpretive traditions. And interestingly, 1 Enoch 32, when referencing the first parents and the tree, focuses on the tree, wisdom, opened eyes, and expulsion. It does not stop to give us a giant demonology lecture about the serpent. That is important, because when studying ancient texts, we must distinguish what the text says from what later traditions say about the text. Both can be worth studying, but they are not identical. Otherwise, we stop reading ancient literature and start reading our own assumptions, wearing ancient costumes. The esoteric question is not should we know. It is what should knowledge turn us into? That is the question. If your spiritual studies make you crueler, something went wrong. If studying hidden knowledge makes you unable to tolerate ordinary people, something went wrong. If every mystery makes you feel superior, something went wrong. If learning conspiracy claims makes you suspicious of everybody, something went wrong. If studying religion makes you hate everyone outside your religion, something went very wrong. Knowledge should increase discernment, not paranoia. Compassion, not gullibility. Humility, not self-erasure. Strength, not domination. You should become harder to manipulate and safer to love. Now that is awakening. And at the danger of seeing patterns everywhere, this one matters, collective. Once you learn pattern recognition, the mind gets excited. Symbols, numbers, coincidences, repeated themes, synchronicities. The mind begins connecting dots, sometimes correctly. Sometimes the dots are not even on the same sheet of paper. Discernment means knowing the difference. Humans are extraordinary pattern recognition machines. That ability helped our ancestors survive. Movement in the grass, maybe wind, maybe predator. The nervous system says, we'll assume predator and apologize to the wind later. Useful, but the same machinery can create patterns where none exist. That is why esoteric study requires grounding. Evidence, context, comparison, historical sources, alternative explanations. The mystical mind without critical thinking becomes easy prey. The critical mind without wonder becomes spiritually constipated. We need both. Wonder asks, what could this mean? Discernment asks, how do we know? Those two should date, possibly marry. Enoch the tree and the internet. Imagine handing humanity the accumulated knowledge of civilization in a device small enough to fit inside a pocket. Ancient kings would have started wars for that power. Libraries, maps, medical information, languages, history, astronomy, philosophy, sacred texts, all instantly accessible. And what did we do? Dance challenges, arguments, cat videos, and somebody's uncle posting a photograph of a cloud saying NASA is hiding dragons. To be fair, the cat videos are excellent, but this is the Eden problem in miniature. Access does not equal wisdom. The internet did not merely give us knowledge. It revealed what we choose when knowledge becomes abundant. That may be one of the greatest spiritual mirrors ever created. Core lesson, collective. The Garden of Righteousness does not teach us to fear knowledge. It teaches us to respect consequence. Knowledge changes the knower. Once the eyes open, responsibility increases. Once you know better, eventually you must decide whether you will be better. That is where wisdom begins, not in collecting secrets, in integration. Can the lesson enter your behavior? Can truth change your choices? Can awareness soften your ego? Can understanding interrupt an inherited pattern? If not, you did not receive wisdom. You received information. And information without transformation is just spiritual clutter. Some people have entire metaphysical garages full of it. Receipts. Tonight's central passage is Fern Enoch 32, where Enoch reaches the Garden of Righteousness and encounters extraordinary trees. Raphael identifies one tree with the ancient story of Enoch's forebears, saying they ate from it, learned wisdom, had their eyes opened, recognized their nakedness, and were driven from the garden. The underlying Eden narrative comes from Genesis chapters 2 and 3, where the tree is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis does not identify its fruit as an apple. The relationship between Enoch's tree traditions, Eden imagery, wisdom, and later Tree of Life interpretations has been examined extensively in scholarship on early Jewish apocalyptic literature and wisdom traditions. And the ancient Aramaic fragments of First Enoch among the Dead Sea Scrolls demonstrate that substantial Enochic traditions circulated in Jewish communities well before Christianity. Receipts on the table. The apple may now leave the courtroom. Case dismissed. Do not fear knowledge. Fear knowledge without character. Do not fear questions. Fear answers that are never allowed to be questioned. Do not fear awakening. Fear becoming arrogant because you awaken to one layer of a mystery with 1,000 layers beneath it. Your eyes opening is not graduation. It is enrollment, because once you see, you become responsible for what you do with sight. Some knowledge should make you speak. Some should make you quiet. Some should make you apologize. Some should make you leave. Some should make you return. Some should make you realize the villain in the story was not who you thought. And the hardest knowledge? Sometimes it reveals something about you. That is when the garden becomes initiation. Because blaming Adam is easy. Blaming Eve is easy. Blaming serpents, watchers, spirits, governments, ancestors, enemies, exes, Mercury, algorithms, and that one cousin who has been suspicious since 1997? Easy. But wisdom eventually turns the mirror around. Now that your eyes are open, what will you become? That is the question hiding beneath the tree. And Enoch's journey is about to move from earthly gardens into something even larger. Because soon, Uriel will begin showing him the machinery of the heavens, the paths of the sun, the gates of the moon, the calendar, the seasons, the stars, and one of the most misunderstood sections of Enoch will finally step forward. The astronomical book. That is where people start shouting flat earth, portals, and secret frequencies. So naturally, we are going directly in there. Bring discernment. Apparently the internet already brought everybody else. Ahll.
Until next time, your sea star Kiracy, channeled by 3611027, the beautiful whisperer. Our sea star Devalan. Apply the news you can use.